Good afternoon. My name is Mark Acosta. I'm one of the editors of the Press Enterprise newspaper. We're here to do another one of our Google Hangouts, a chat where we talk about issues in the news here in the Inland Empire. I'd like to introduce our guest today. Dave, are you there?
Yeah, it's Dave Danelski here.
Yeah, this is Dave Danelski. Dave is one of our staff writers here. Has been at the paper for many years, and Dave writes about all kinds of different issues from the environment to local government. And Dave, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to us today.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So today, Dave, we're going to talk about, and to our viewers, we're going to talk a little bit about something that was in the news yesterday, the news involving former Moreno Valley City Councilman Marcelo Co. So Dave, you were one of the people working on this story yesterday. Why don't you start by giving people just a very brief recap of what the news was yesterday on Tuesday, Election Day?
Okay, we had some big news that came from the district attorney and the FBI. They announced that former Moreno Valley City Councilman Marcelo Co had been charged and has agreed to plead guilty to both bribery and tax fraud, and tax evasion. And the curious thing about it was that the amount of the bribe. They said that he took $2.3 million bribe in a sting operation, which they said was a record for such an undercover operation. And they also said that that the bribe was basically to Co would secure city council votes for certain projects, regardless of their quality.
Yes. So why don't you tell us? You actually met him yesterday briefly. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about how that went and what he told you when you talked to him about the news?
Well, I'll give a little bit about how we work. We had learned there was going to be a press conference at 11 o'clock in the morning regarding the Moreno Valley corruption case. We didn't know what was going to be announced, but we thought it was a good idea if I went to Moreno Valley before this announcement, so I could be ready to talk to whoever we needed to talk to.
Right.
So I was in town, and I got word just by cell phone that Marcelo Co, who resigned as a council member just in August, had been charged with bribery. So I drove over to a property he owns. It's also a property where he had a business, and I had just learned this news for just a few minutes, and I saw a truck pull into his driveway. And I got out of my car and I saw him talking to whoever this person was who had the pickup truck. I called out his name. He waved me onto his driveway, and I immediately asked him. And he asked me who I was. I explained I was with the Press Enterprise, and I immediately asked him if he had a reaction to the fact that he had been charged with bribery. He then said, "Not me," and then he ordered me off the property, and that was pretty much the end of it.
So it was a pretty short interview.
Well, I wouldn't even call it an interview. It was I got a question out, and then I was kicked off the property. So.
Now you had spent a lot of time earlier this year working on a long investigative piece of journalism about Mr. Co and his past legal challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found out in the course of writing that story, which I believe published in July?
Yeah. Well, in April, Mr. Co, along with several other city council members and some other business people in town, had their homes searched by the FBI, and I was asked to do some profiles on some of the people who had their homes searched, and I did one on Marcelo Co. And basically what I found out, he was a guy who had a lot of problems with following laws and rules. For example, he owned several properties in town. He's a landlord, and he had several. He had a very thick code enforcement file and violations going back to the 90s. And he would build additions and substandard buildings and rent them out, which is in a violation of city code rules. And he had at one point pled guilty to several misdemeanors. He pled guilty to one misdemeanor after being charged with several misdemeanors for code violations. And one case was pretty egregious. It really stood out in my memory. There was a single-family house where the garage was rented out as a living unit, and the house was living out as a living unit. And then there was an illegal building between the garage and the house. And there was a family of 5 living there in in substandard conditions. When the authorities found out, they had to ask the family to leave and have this structure demolished. These were serious violations, and he pled guilty. He worked out a plea agreement while he was a sitting council member. He had been elected in 2010, and his code cases dated back before that. So. And the other thing was he operated a business on a residential property, which is a violation of zoning laws, and his business ran into trouble, had been suspended twice for not paying taxes or filling out proper paperwork with the state officials. So he just had a lot of kind of a long record of a lot of public records showing that he was in violation of various sets of rules out there. He also had a very lousy traffic record, a lot of moving traffic violations as well.
Did he ever, during the course of reporting that story, did he ever respond or talk to you about what his side of the story was on these various legal issues?
Well, the closest I ever got to him was talking to an attorney of his, a guy named Michael Geller, but he himself never talked to me. In fact, the first time I talked to Mr. Co was yesterday.
Interesting. So, how long has he been on the council, and can you tell the viewers a little bit about his rise to political leadership in Moreno Valley?
Well, Mr. Co was elected in the fall of 2010, and it was an interesting year in that a lot of incumbents got ousted, and he ousted Bonnie Flickinger, who had that seat in Moreno Valley, central part of Moreno Valley, since I think 1994. I have to double check that, but I actually had in 1994 I was a City Hall reporter in Moreno Valley, and I covered that election. So it was a long-time incumbent that he had replaced. He funded his campaign more than something like $130,000 of his own money went into it. It was a very expensive campaign, and we've calculated that he spent about $90 a vote on his effort to get elected to the City Council.
Interesting. Now, going back to yesterday's news, I understand one of the things that the authorities talked about yesterday at the news conference was this idea that he was promising that he would be able to deliver 3-0 votes. Can you talk about that a little bit as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, to kind of looking ahead here, the affidavit that came out with his bribery charge said that he had basically talked to a confidential informant who was a businessman and also an FBI person who was going undercover as a real estate broker, and in exchange for the bribe, he was to use money from these people to finance campaigns, and then he would have a 3-0 vote, and in the way it was described in the affidavit, then his 3-0 vote would approve any project that the people who had supported him wanted, regardless of the quality. They used more colorful language than that, actually, in the affidavit.
Right.
But I think you could see it if you want to see the raw language. You could check out pe.com. I think it's posted up there. But anyway, so that raises. I talked to one councilman today who said, well, we don't know whether Mr. Co was accurate or truthful in what he was promising to those people who didn't realize were undercover agents, but it still raises the question of whether essentially a year worth of city council actions may have been tainted by corruption. That's something that's going to be sorted out as time goes on. And the other thing is Paul Zellerbach said that he's far from done from investigating.
Right.
Paul Zellerbach is the district attorney, excuse me, from investigating corruption at Moreno Valley City Government. He said 3 times in a 4-minute statement that this is an ongoing corruption investigation, and he also said he's not going to rest until he's finished, and he made it very clear he wasn't finished.
Interesting. Well, we will definitely continue to keep tabs on this evolving story. So, Dave, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. I know you got another story you got to get back to. So, speaking of finishing, we'll finish this one up. Make sure to stay tuned to the Press Enterprise and pe.com for the latest developments on the continuing Moreno Valley political corruption probe. Again, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Yeah, take care.
No problem. We'll see you.
Bye.